Good evening. Thank you all so much for joining us to our latest edition of Issues That Matter, our series. Tonight, our topic is Bridging the Divide, Understanding LGBTQ plus rights and legislation in Arkansas. The series is presented by the Central Arkansas Library System, the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, and KUAR FM 89.1. I'm Daniel Breen with KUAR News, and I'll be guiding the discussion this evening. This Zoom forum is being recorded for a later broadcast on KUAR with air dates to be announced. And before I introduce our panelists for this evening, I want to thank both the Central Arkansas Library System and the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County for partnering up with us for this event. I'd also like to give a brief explanation over the format for this online forum. We'll be asking our panelists a variety of questions, but we also want to hear from our viewers. So if you have a question, please use the chat function on Zoom down there at the bottom to ask it, and we will get to those at the end of our conversation tonight. Well, all of our panelists have received our topics and questions ahead of time so that they could come prepared with ideas, statistics, whatever they want to bring to the table. And for each question asked, participants are free to answer the questions and comment on each other's input. We'll then move on to the next question after that. Well, without further ado, please help me welcome our participants to the forum. We've got Representative Tippi McCullough. She is a member of the Arkansas House of Representatives representing District 74 here in Little Rock. We've got Dr. Gwendolyn Paige Herzig. She is the owner of Park West Pharmacy in West Little Rock. And last but not least, we have Dr. Janet Cathey. She is a board-certified OB-GYN and a clinical provider with Planned Parenthood Great Plains here in Little Rock. I want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I'm going to start in the order I introduced you all, but switch it up every time. So we'll go Representative McCullough first, Dr. Herzig, then Dr. Cathey. Then next question, I'll start with you, Dr. Herzig, then Dr. Cathey, Representative McCullough, so on and so forth. You all know the drill. It's going to be a great discussion. I want to dive right in. But before we do that, if I could just get you all to tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your connection to the topic we'll be discussing tonight? And I'll start with you, Representative McCullough.
Sure. Thank you, Daniel. And thank you, Cows, and everybody for having us here tonight. I'm glad to be here with my esteemed panelists also. My name's Tippi McCullough. I'm like you said, state representative for District 74 here in Little Rock and the House Minority Leader. I taught English and coached basketball for 33 years. So my background is in education, and I am the L part of the LGBTQ plus list, lesbian, married. I'm married to my wife, who is a prosecutor here in Little Rock. And I believe that's probably enough right now. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Representative McCullough. Dr. Herzig, you are up next.
Hey, Dr. Herzig or Gwen. I'm trans, fun times, especially in the state of Arkansas, which I guess we'll talk more about that. But yeah, no, that's really about it. So I really just kind of focus on minority care, and my pharmacy kind of services every letter of the alphabet. Good times.
Good times indeed. Thank you so much, Dr. Herzig. And Dr. Cathey, last but not least.
Dr. Herzig has been an incredible asset to the trans community in the time that she opened her pharmacy not that long ago, and she's just played a huge role. But I was in private practice in OB-GYN when I went into practice many years ago. When I finished my residency, we had no training whatsoever in LGBT care. And I'm not sure they have much more than that now. They hopefully so. But I was in my office, and I'd had an endocrinologist call me and say, I've got a patient, a male patient that needs a hysterectomy. I can't get anybody to see him. Will you see him? And I thought, why would I not? You know? And that was, an early introduction to being surprised that a provider would not provide care for a patient. But I saw that patient. He's actually still my patient. And word just slowly got out that I would provide this care. And I just was self-taught just along the way. but acquired this. And then in 2014, I was on faculty at the university and some other physicians. The timing was right. Again, 2014. And it was like, we need a gender clinic. And if there's going to be a gender clinic, it should be at UMS. So a group of us got together and we just had the right people, and it happened. And since then, I was retired UMS, but Planned Parenthood said, no, we're not going to let you retire. So I'm providing transgender care there now.
Oh, no.
Daniel.
Did we lose Daniel?
I think we did. Yeah.
I can pull up the list of questions.
Yeah, technical problems with Daniel there.
Here he is. I've got the questions here. The first
Me too.
one to Representative McCullough, I assume then, it said, what has been the evolution as you've seen it of the anti-LGBT movement, and where is it now?
All right, I'll start off. I'll start us off. Thank you very much. Well, the evolution has been, it's been a long, hard road. I think that most of us, when marriage became legal, I think we thought that, Daniel, we're just kind of going on. Is that okay?
That is the best possible thing that could have happened. Thank you all so much. I'm so sorry. My Zoom completely froze, and do not let me interrupt.
Okay. We're talking about the evolution. And I think when marriage became legal, most of us thought that would probably never happen in our lifetime, and thought that that was a huge step forward. And then, of course, there's been a backlash, I feel like, to that. I think there was a backlash included also with President Obama's election. So there's been this long political thing happening where I believe the Republicans have tried to use, they've had to find new ways to find wedge issues and to make things political for their own political gain. And I think for a long time, it was just, they attacked the gay and lesbian community probably. And then when public opinion started swaying a little bit on that and started becoming a little more accepted, then they have tried to find another minority group that they can pick on. And so now we've gone into this next chapter of opposition against the trans community, and just solely for political gain. I honestly feel like a lot of my colleagues over in the legislature do not really care that much about any of this stuff. I believe that they're worried about getting reelected, and I believe that this is, we all know it's happening all over the country, and that's solely what it's for. This doesn't affect most of them in their everyday life in any way. And it's just a new way to try to gain favor, even catching the dog with the abortion issue is they're losing some favor from people over that because it's too extreme. It's gone too far. And so they have to find new ways to try to drive those wedges in for political gain.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Representative McCullough, and to all of you for serving as interim host in my absence. Again, the question to you next, Dr. Herzig, again, the question, what has been the evolution as you've seen it of the anti-LGBTQ movement, and where is it now?
Yeah, no, so for being someone who's kind of relatively new to the community, because I've only been out and about since the last 3 years with my transition. And even though I was very closeted since childhood, but it's kind of just crazy to me to see how fast and how rad it's like a wildfire that took off. It's like, a piece of legislation gets introduced and you're like, okay. And then it's like the next year, it's like, I feel like it's a hydra. You cut off one head and multiple pop up and you're like, oh my gosh. And it's, I think it's really sad that I'm having to warn providers, especially who are taking on new LGBTQ patients, that, hey, it's legislative session coming up. And you need to be checking on depression and anxiety of this patient group because it's going to run rampant. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, no, because it directly affects patients. And, I think it's just, I think it's just so crazy to be like this, in the game this far and just seeing how much like healthcare can be affected by legislation, and to a point where it's like it's really denying care to those who need it most, especially these minority groups. And you know, even though I know like being trans is like the new like scary thing right now, which is like a lot of people just want to live their lives, it's just, I don't know, it's kind of horrifying to just see what I've seen in just 3 years versus someone who's probably been in the community for 10 to 20 years and seeing it like wax and wane and just like going on, like, you know, Representative McCullough said, you know, just over several like years. And so.
All right. Thank you,
Yes.
Dr. Herzig. And yes, please go ahead. Sorry.
I would say, you know, Representative McCullough referred to the abortion movement, and there's just parallels. These same people that we have fought for years on the anti-abortion front are the same people who now they've taken up this is their new issue. And just as you know, when Roe passed, I thought I've missed the movement. You know, women have these rights, never dreaming they could be taken away. And so I think it's the same. We look at now gay marriage and those rights. No, we know now things like that can be taken away from us. You know, if they can take it away from 50% of the population, they can easily take it away from 15 to 20% and do it to the 1% without a thought or care.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Cathey. Next question coming up. Gender affirming care has specifically come under scrutiny in recent years. What exactly is gender affirming care and why is it important? And we'll start with Dr. Herzig.
Yeah, so gender affirming care is super important because you're basically just identifying that individual and reinforcing what they feel like their gender identity is, in a sense of what they feel on the inside, which might not accurately reflect what's on the outside. And so, you know, for instance, like I was assigned male at birth. And so that was on my original birth certificate because that term gets put a lot in bills. But I didn't really feel like that. At an early age, at 12 or 13, I just felt like, you know, I was like, every night I was going to sleep, like wishing I was waking up as a girl. And like, why can't I hang out with the social groups I want to be a part of and do the things I want to do? And I felt like I was getting socially isolated and having these social norms put on me that I have to like be with the guy group and everything like that. And it's very stressful. And especially when you don't have the word, like I didn't have the word trans when I was 12 or 13. And who do you talk to about that? We had 2 gay guys in our high school that got picked on and bullied enough. I'm like, there's no way that I'm going to bring that up. And so, yeah, so it's just like gender affirming care is really just kind of acknowledging that person's existence and who they feel are on the inside and how you can help bring that outside or that inside feeling outward. And so.
All right, Dr. Cathey.
As a provider, when we talk about gender affirming care, a lot of people, the first thing they think about is hormones and surgery, you know, but gender affirming care, there are many, many pieces to that puzzle. And as Gwen would say, the first piece is just acknowledging and socially affirming who that person is, but it is, it's social care. It's mental health care. It's medical care, which may include hormonal management. It may include surgical management, but it's also providing legal assistance and documentation because that's a part of keeping people safe. So there's many, many parts of this care: mental health providers, legal providers, medical providers, and people within the political world.
All right, and Representative McCullough.
Yeah, I'm not going to address what it is because I think these 2 women that just spoke have a much more qualified to talk about exactly what it is than I am. But I do want to talk a little bit about why it's important because healthcare is a right. I mean, it's a right in this country, and we have medical professionals. And we have science, and we know that all of these things are, all of these issues have lots of documentation. We have always had a trans community. We always will. It just hasn't people haven't been educated about it. And I'm happy, along with others, especially people from that community, to try to help educate people some. But willful ignorance is not an excuse to take away people's rights. Parents in Arkansas should have the right to take care of their kids in the best way that is possible and to get them the best medical care that's possible. And that's something that our state has tried to take away. Thank God for the ACLU and the lawsuits that are happening that are putting a stop to some of this stuff, at least for now. There are always appeals. But for example, right now, our AG here in Arkansas is signing on to a letter opposing the abortion exceptions to the federal health privacy rule. And honestly, this is a way, this doesn't just have to do with abortion, actually. This is, he's overstepping his authority. He is trying to enforce this abortion ban and also unconstitutional attacks on children, even if they're performed in states where that is legal. Arkansas parents and children deserve the right to make healthcare decisions when they want to, how they want to. They should receive the full privacy rights afforded to them and not have to fear prosecution if the AG disagrees with their decision. Also, in my opinion, they just want total control of people's healthcare, their doctor's offices, and what happens in their bedroom. And so gender affirming care is extremely important.
All right. Well, thank you, Representative McCullough. And moving into our next question, I think along similar lines, and we'll go to you first, Dr. Cathey. What has been your experience personally living and working under laws, some of which we've already talked about, which restrict the speech, the conduct, and the expression of LGBTQ people?
One of the things that I've seen, in 2014, when we had the gender clinic, it was like we were at this tipping point, and patients came in for gender care, and they came in hopeful and excited and unafraid and looking forward to this journey, to these changes that were before them. In the last couple of years, when I have a new patient come in, they come in with more of a sense of relief that they're going to get care, that they've been allowed to get care, with relief and a sense of urgency, like, how soon can I get this care? What if they're going to take this care away from me? When can I get my name changed? Because I want to move, I want to get out of Arkansas. Those are the things I see. So it's changed how I practice, in that I've gone from like a nurturing kind of excited cheerleader kind of provider for someone to being like, it's going to be okay. We're going to get this taken care of. And the legal part of, I've gone from just as much legal part of a medical practice, I never would have dreamed that. But a big part of my practice now is like, we've got to get your documents because we want you to be safe. And yes, let's get your birth certificate changed because we don't know what's going to happen. And so, that part, it's just totally changed the way you provide care. But like I said, the biggest effect is just the emotional aspect, how patients come in with, like I said, instead of excitement and anticipation, this kind of fear and urgency.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Cathey. Representative McCullough, you're up next.
Thank you. I feel like I personally am fortunate to live in one of the bluest parts of our state. I know there are lots of people that live in areas where there's probably a lot more fear. There's not as much openness. There's not as many resources. There's not as much help. They don't have a Dr. Cathey or Dr. Herzig that they can turn to, and or have to make a trip to Little Rock somehow to do that. To me, all of these things should be non-issues. We're all, Americans living our lives and should be non-issues. In my life at the legislature, being a caucus of one, the only LGBTQ person in the, well, I should say the only openly LGBTQ person in the legislature. It does affect me, especially during session. It does affect me. These are matters that if some of them affect my life personally, and then if they don't affect me personally, they're affecting many people in my community that I know and love, and in really deep ways. I'm also there every day as I sit in committees and I watch people take off work. I watch them maybe take even risks to come up there and to maybe sit for a long time. Hopefully get called up. And if they get called up to testify, sometimes their time is limited and they're here fighting for their lives, and they are limited to a minute maybe or something like that. I've seen some horrible things happen, and I know more than anybody that the two other panelists here have been through that themselves, and I've seen them there often. And I appreciate their courage and their advocacy, because there have been some very horrible things that have happened up there, and things that have been said, and parents have been pushed out and people arrested. And I mean, Dr. Herzig, I'll let you tell your own story, but that's one of the worst things. When you were there to testify, it's probably one of the worst things I've seen since I've been there, for sure. But to live in Arkansas and for there to be this oppressive atmosphere, it works on people's mental health. It takes a toll on people, and it's not getting better. It seems to be getting worse, and finding more ways to do it. And I think we'll talk about that later. But right now, I don't see an end to this, because the loud group on that political end they're being loud, and they're pushing, and they're threatening. And I think there's just a real oppressive atmosphere here in our state. And I also get a little aggravated. I don't think Arkansas gets as much attention as some of our surrounding states, and a lot of this stuff started here. We're bad to copy off of other states, but a lot of stuff actually started here. And I don't believe that we get the media attention nationally or regionally that we should for the things that are going on here.
All right. Excuse me. And thank you, Representative McCullough. Dr. Herzig, just to restate the question, what has been your personal experience living and working under laws here in Arkansas which restrict the speech, conduct, and expression of LGBTQ people?
No, for sure. So I feel like working in the pharmacy, it's a lot of like highs and lows. It's like riding this roller coaster that you're like, oh, when you get new patients in, especially when they're coming from Janet or Luann or from wherever gender clinic they get into, they finally get to the pharmacy, right? And they're finally ready to start HRT because they feel like that's something necessary for them to be successful. And it's like, I'm here. I am like they go through the gate, not gatekeeping process, but go through the gate. And I have
It is kind of gatekeeping though. Yeah.
But I have like the treasure chest of like HRT, and they're like so ready for it. And so I get the fun part of being like, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's going to go. This is what to expect. I'm so excited for you. We are here for you for any resources you need and stuff like that. And so it's like motivation and building them up, right? I'm like, hey, you ready for your first dose? Here's a bottle of water. Your car's right there. You get started right now, because I know you've been waiting your life for it. And so there's a lot of those highs, and it's, doing people's first shots where they're super excited and whatnot. I'm like, and I try to make like the irreversible changes like scary. Like, hey, when you're on P, your voice is going to drop. And they're like, and I try to make it like it's permanent. And they're like, I know, I can't wait. I'm like, I'm happy for you. But I mean, there's those highs, but then you get the lows. And so when you get a new piece of legislation, or something happens in Texas, or then you hear about Ron DeSantis or something else crazy, and it's just like, and your patients come in like, I don't know, I feel like I need to move. What about I'm like, and eventually too, I feel like the patient population gets this legislative fatigue, where it's like, everyone keeps telling like the 1% of the 1% to like, hey, keep on fighting, go, 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 go. You got to make your voice, but eventually it gets to the point where they just get exhausted. These are just normal everyday people who already have like anxiety and depression, or some sort of, mental like social isolation issue that's going on. And so it's like they get this legislation fatigue. And so it's really just a lot of like I don't know. I never thought I would have to really be as so heavy into mental health of like trying to build my patient population back up when they're coming in, or like talking to them or checking in on them. But yeah, that's probably a huge part of our job. And so yeah, it's not just necessarily just counseling, dispensing, and all happy-go-lucky. There's definitely like the doom and gloom side of it, sadly. And so it's really just kind of trucking and making sure patients are taken care of and keep going. So
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Herzig. And if you all are just tuning in, you're watching Issues That Matter, Bridging the Divide, Understanding LGBTQ plus Rights and Legislation in Arkansas. This series is presented by the Central Arkansas Library System, the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, and KUAR FM 89.1. Our guests today, our panelists, Dr. Gwendolyn Paige Herzig, who you just heard from. She's the owner of Park West Pharmacy in West Little Rock. Dr. Janet Cathey, a board-certified OB-GYN with Planned Parenthood Great Plains, and Democratic State Representative Tippi McCullough, State Representative with representing District 74 here in Little Rock. Well, moving on to our next question, and now I will start with you, Representative McCullough. What do you believe to be the overall impact of anti-LGBTQ legislation on a state like Arkansas? How does it impact the quality of life in the state and the state's economy, things like that?
Yeah, I believe it has a huge effect on the economy and our quality of life here. I mean, especially for the LGBTQ plus community, but also for all Arkansans. It makes us, in the past, as little as 12 or so years ago, Arkansas was what I thought of as a really independent type state where we didn't necessarily follow states around us or necessarily what was going on. We kind of, paid attention to what was going on here. We've always had fairly moderate governors, no matter what party they were from. Mm-hmm. And we've seemed to have a little bit of sense, but it seems like we've gone off the deep end now. And we seem to be one of those unfriendly, hateful states that I feel like we are losing our creative, intellectual economy talent that might move here for jobs. But not just that, I think we're also losing our homegrown talent. I hear, I think Dr. Herzig or somebody, or maybe Dr. Cathey, somebody said something about somebody saying, should I move? And I hear this a lot, and not just from the LGBTQ community, but also from kids that are graduating from high school and they're going off to college, or they're in college and they're saying, I'm not coming back, I'm leaving the state and I'm not coming back. So I feel like we're losing a lot of our talent, and we're not going to be able to recruit talent. And that's in healthcare, whether we're talking about UAMS, whether we're talking about the University of Arkansas, whether we're talking about new technology. I mean, there are so many exciting things that could be happening in Arkansas that we could actually lead on. And this just takes us a step back, I think. Well, more than a step back, it takes us way back into doing those types of things. And I believe that at some point here in Arkansas, our business community is going to have to step up. In the past, they have stepped up a little bit, but I think that they're going to have to step up again to stop this, to help us recruit and to stop the bleeding of talent leaving the state.
On that point, not to interrupt, but I do think that Arkansas, I mean, there was this point where we were like, I felt like we were losing our image as this backward state, that we were starting to look forward and progressive, and we had Northwest Arkansas and we were doing independent thinking, and now we're just kind of digressed into this backward state of bullying, but yeah,
and I agree with that. But what's really frustrating to me is I don't think it's most Arkansans.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
I think on a one-on-one level, most
Yeah.
Arkansans are going to be nice to everybody. And that's what I like to think. But you get this group mentality of bullying at its worst, and that's what we look like.
Yeah, it's a really small, loud group. That's
one-on-one on Arkansas. I think they're going to help each other. Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much. Dr. Herzig, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I'm born and raised Arkansan. I grew up in Jonesboro, graduated Brooklyn High School in 2008, went to Arkansas State University, graduated in 2012, graduated University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences with my pharmacy degree in 2017. I've lived here all my life. And I find it so crazy that we are so hyped on attacking really minority communities when they're like, Arkansas is like one of the worst in education, one of the worst in infrastructure, one of the worst in poverty and like the unsheltered population. It's just, there are so many bigger issues that I feel like we need to be devoting time to make real progress to make Arkansas great. Arkansas, I think, could be a fantastic state to live in. Good Lord, we have like we're in the natural state. But yet it's like, it's like, I wish people would just wake up. I'm like, look what's really happening and look at the statistics of things. Numbers don't lie. And it's like, if you want to live in a better state with better like jobs and better like income for housing and stuff like that, it's like, we could do so much better if you would just make your politicians know that they need to be voting for or actually going after and doing what needs to be done right. I'm like, I'm just a pharmacist. I am a small business owner, and I feel like I have made such an impact in my community. But if people would really just kind of like take a step and do something, outside of just the normal, I feel like we could get a lot done.
Dr. Cathey, did you have any other thoughts on that? I didn't give you like a full turn or anything.
No, we're good. We're good.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Well, moving right along to our next question, and thank you all again for your perspectives on that. And we'll start with you, Dr. Herzig, on this one. What, in your opinion, isn't talked about in discussions like this? What is talked about, and what is talked about rather that you think isn't helpful and shouldn't be the main focus?
Okay, so what should we be talking about and what we shouldn't be talking about, right?
More or less, yes.
Yeah, for sure. So like what we should be talking about, I feel like it's really easy to like, let's talk about gender affirming surgery and let's mix it with genital mutilation and like, let's talk about, protecting the kids and so on and so forth. I feel like, it's real easy to like throw words out there and try to scare people. But the fact that like, it's really hard for an adult to get gender affirming surgery. And that's when we're talking top surgery or bottom surgery. And just to think a kid could just stroll into a surgery center, have those procedures performed and be like, oh, that happens. That's so not the truth. For adults to get gender affirming surgery generally requires 3 letters and it's super gatekeepy. Like for instance, it's like you could be put on a wait list for 2 to 3 years just to have a consultation. That's not even the surgery date. And then once you finally get your surgery date, if you don't have your money for the deductible, which if you have a high deductible, it can be $10,000 to $20,000 for an individual deductible. But if let's say you're lucky enough to have a personal deductible that's low, like $2,000 maybe, then you have to get 3 letters generally, a psych eval, a letter from a therapist, and then you have to get a letter from your HRT provider. And then if you get those 3 letters and you get everything done, I guarantee you insurance will be looking for a reason to deny because they don't like to generally pay out $120,000 to $200,000 for surgery. And so I feel like there's just like, I feel like we should really be talking about like what's really involved with gender affirming care and what's really not involved. And so I feel like that's my surgery soapbox. But going back to what Dr. Cathey was saying, transitioning is a lot more than just HRT and surgery. If those aren't even required, that's fantastic. A lot of times it's really the social aspect of transitioning that's so important. HRT is like the long game when it comes down to like actually implementing and causing changes. If that person feels like they need that, it takes HRT 2 to 5 years to like really see some good effects. You can actually do so much with a social transition immediately to get some effects. That's not even funny. And a lot of people don't even want surgeries because either A, they're cost prohibitive, or B, it's just like they don't really feel like they necessarily need the risk. Like if someone doesn't need an unnecessary surgery to be happy, they don't need it.
Thank you, Dr. Herzig. Dr. Cathey, you're up next.
I think one of the things that we don't talk about in this legislation, and the focus is on trans care as it should be, but one of the things that's happening, and Representative McCullough can address this, is the effect that these bills have on medicine and the practice of medicine, because these bills will allow you to provide certain care, abortion care, trans care, or not provide that care. And if they can't disallow that care, they're going to say, okay, you've got to specifically provide that care in this way. So if I'm a physician who's deciding whether to practice in Arkansas, I'm going to say, wait a minute. Arkansas, they can legislate the practice of medicine. And I'm not sure I want to practice in a state where medicine can be legislated. Because if they can legislate abortion care or trans care, they can legislate, they can decide to legislate psychiatric care or pain management care or any kind of care. So I think that we don't talk enough about, and the Arkansas Medical Society is not involved enough in how these bills affect medicine and the practice and future of medicine. They're intended to discourage providers from providing that care. Well, it does that because it creates chaos, but ultimately it's going to decrease the number of providers in our state.
Thank you, Dr. Cathey and Representative McCullough. Again, the question, what isn't talked about in discussions like this? And also what is talked about that you think isn't helpful or shouldn't be the main focus in discussions like this?
I agree with Dr. Cathey about the chilling effect on medicine and on providers for sure. Religion right now is driving everything, and that's as long as our National Supreme Court continues to make those types of decisions, we're going to have these issues. And then here in Arkansas, our Arkansas Supreme Court, is along the same lines, and so they're going to continue to choose religion, I think, over science and medicine, which takes us back into the dark ages. I think what's most missed in all conversations are the voices of people that are most affected. And even at the legislature, when we do have one of these terrible bills pop up, we have some great people that come up and testify, like, once again, at extreme cost to them often, to come up there and to do it. Not just cost for missed work, not just cost because they have to be courageous and have to be willing to be out in the public and talk about their very private lives, but also at the cost to their mental health. And there's been a big bipartisan push at the legislature for mental health. But I keep having conversations with people and say, we can't say that we are doing things to help people's mental health out of one side of our mouth while we do things that absolutely attack and harm their mental health out of the other side of our mouths. But, the voices of the people that are affected are the ones that are missing. We're hearing these crazy stories from somebody out of state about something that happened at a pride event in Batesville, Arkansas. I was there. I know it's not true because I was there. So we get all of these kind of these little stories that people have say that happened that aren't necessarily happening. And, I think that's one of the things that isn't helpful. There's a lot of misinformation that continues to be put out there, and that it's very hard, without calling somebody a bald-faced liar, it's very hard to confront people over those types of things. But there's a ton of misinformation.
Thank you, Representative McCullough. If you all are just tuning in, you're watching Issues That Matter, Bridging the Divide, Understanding LGBTQ+ Rights and Legislation in Arkansas. This series is presented by the Central Arkansas Library System, the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, and KUAR FM 89.1. This virtual forum is being recorded for broadcast, and it will air at a later date on KUAR. We are nearing the end of our program this evening. I want to thank you all again for joining us today. We are seeing a lot of comments and questions in the chat. Good to see that. Keep that up, and we will get to some of those questions at the end of our program tonight. Our next question from our side, though, going to you, Dr. Cathey, first. What has been the impact of advocacy and activism on the state's policymaking process, in your opinion? Has it made a difference?
I think that it's imperative to have the small group advocacies that we do on the local level. They are, we know that grassroots level advocacy makes a difference. We know that grassroots is how important it is. We also, though, with groups this small, could not do it without the organizational structure of organizations such as the ACLU. We couldn't do it without them. The grassroots, their importance is getting people to vote. Their importance is supporting people within their community financially that need support. It's also bringing all these smaller groups together and giving them a voice. So, you know, I think it's important for us all to donate and give to our local groups, but it's also important to support, you know, on the Arkansas level of the ACLU, because this trans youth bill would not have been struck down without them.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Cathey. Representative McCullough, you're up next.
And I think it means everything. This is how our government works. We have to have people that come up, and we have to have advocates, and we have to have real people that are up there telling their stories about their lives and how these things affect them. And I have seen that have great effect on people. I mean, let's just take, for example, when Governor Hutchinson was governor, and he actually met with doctors and trans youth and their parents, and he vetoed that bill. And that makes a difference, actually meeting people and actually talking to them and actually hearing their stories, because most of the legislatures, I mean, there's 100 of us in the House, and most of them don't know a trans person, or don't think they know a trans
No,
person.
they know that they
Right.
know.
They possibly do and probably do, but they don't know that. And they've never tried to talk to anybody about their experience or anything like that, because they just don't feel like they have to. Once again, it's a small minority. You know, you're not going to vote for me anyway, so why should I waste my time talking to you? So I think it's important that we continue to have those people there. I also have seen, once again, witnesses testify that have made a great impact. The father of one of the trans youth this session in judiciary that got up there, and his testimony actually made them change their bill. We were able to get a bill. It still wasn't great, but they changed it in a way that was a positive change, all because of that doctor testifying. Now, I will say this. I do think we can get more organized, and I think we can up our advocacy game in lots of ways, because I also witnessed this when I'm sitting there in committee. I watch members of the committee stop listening. Mm-hmm. They're looking at their phones, or they're not listening. And I think sometimes it's because, once again, this is a small minority of advocates that can show up there at the Capitol and testify. And they're up there, and they see sometimes the same people come in, they hear a lot of the same testimony, and it's easier for them to just tune that out instead of continuing to give this person, this citizen that came in, to spend their time telling their story, instead of giving them their full attention and focus, which is what I feel like we're elected to do. I don't feel like I should be playing on my phone. I feel like I should be even if it's somebody I don't agree with, I probably should be paying even more attention if I don't agree with that person. And I feel like we should give them our full attention. That's what we were elected to do. That's what we're up there to do. And it's disrespectful. I don't care if you've seen the same person. I don't care if you've seen the same story. Those people are spending their time up there to help us through this process. And, you know, I definitely think that we could do a better job up there as far as that goes. But I don't think there's anything that is better than having that person with this lived experience tell their story. I do think we can get better at it in a lot of ways and more organized.
Thank you, Representative McCullough. And Dr. Herzig, again, the question, what has been the impact, in your opinion, of advocacy and activism in the state's policymaking process? Do you think it's made a difference?
Honestly, like I said, being only within 3 years of actually really focusing on legislation, honestly, maybe yes, maybe no. I mean, I was quite, excited when ASA overturned the trans youth bill. The fact that, but at the exact same time, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like the debate's still out on that. I would like to see another year or two and see how many people come out and vote. And I feel like more or less, it's like, I think what's more impactful is I see more and more organizations coming out there with you have Central Arkansas Pride, and you have all these other prides, and Saline Pride, and Northwest Arkansas Pride, and NEA Pride, and you have all these other organizations like Intransitive, and they're posting these events and whatnot to really show community togetherness. And it really gives people some courage and whatnot to step out of their comfort zone and actually potentially come out of the closet. Because I feel like someone said it best in this chat, when I'm occasionally reading, is that, you don't really care until you're affected by it, whether if it's a loved one or someone that you know. I'll tell you right now, my parents were Republican until I came out. And then it's either they had a choice either to accept me and love me or to socially isolate me. And my parents loved me. And so it really kind of opened their eyes to being what's really going on politically and what I would have to go through. And they started fearing for their kid, which they're you're a grown adult. I should not have to be fearing for my child. But if you have kids, you understand that you never stop fearing for your kids. And so that being said, it's I feel like the more and more people step out of the closet and kind of really truly be their authentic selves, it's going to make that much more of a difference. And so I really feel like hopefully we can just continue on giving people hope and inspiration to be able to be who they are.
Well, Dr. Herzig, I want to stick with you for our final question today, because I think it goes really well with what you were saying. Going into future legislative sessions, what do you think that advocacy push, the continuance of that, will look like? And what more battles or what more legislation do you envision on the horizon?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I guess bills that are probably on the horizon, I feel like every year there's a bathroom bill. I feel like that's just kind of like a rubber stamp. I feel like there's going to be a protect the kids bill, even though I feel like, we really like to harp on protecting kids, which there are multiple ways we can protect kids. We can protect them from poverty, or from them having good housing, or getting them out of abusive situations that maybe are hidden at home that they don't know. And so on and so forth, providing better education. And so, yeah, I feel like there's plenty of good ways to help kids and protect them. But there's probably gonna be that another bill. I don't know. I feel like there'll probably be something creative that I'm not thinking of that's probably gonna come out, and we're gonna be like gas. But that being said, I feel like going forward, it's really kind of continuing I feel like I've seen progress. I feel like the more and more safe places and affirming practitioners we have out there that are willing to provide good affirming care, or even good allies. I feel like our allies have really stepped up in a sense of being a voice of reason, or really learning whatnot. My pharmacy is a prime example. I feel like when I bought my pharmacy, I was pre-transition. It was a very much a country club type mentality pharmacy that I'd purchased. And I'm when I transitioned, I thought I was going to lose everything. I thought my pharmacy was going to close. I thought I was going to be my career was over. Only to find out that I'm slowly transitioning, my pharmacy transitioned with me. And I have actually patients that I'm still amazed to this day use my pharmacy that I thought they would not be accepting. But because I was there and I'm oh, they realized I'm their pharmacist and it was still me, that they're oh, you're still just you. You're just a pharmacist taking care of me, and you're still providing me great, passionate care. It really helped change their minds on a lot of things. Now, don't get me wrong, I still lost some patients, but at the exact same time, I gained a whole population, a whole bunch of resources to get people to the point where they want to be. And so I think as we continue to grow and able to help and build each other up, that's just going to continue to grow. I feel like eventually we're going to get to a tipping point.
Thank you, Dr. Herzig. I'll go back to you, Representative McCullough. I kind of went out of order there.
Yeah, I believe that there's going to be more censorship in the name of protecting children. Also, I think there's a million ways to twist protecting children into ways to discriminate against the community. I mean, that's what the library thing was all about. It wasn't just about pornography. It wasn't just about heterosexual pornography. Nearly every example that anybody tried to show had something to do with an affirming book that for the LGBTQ community. I also believe there's going to continue to be the tearing down of affirmative action and DEI, as we've already seen happen. The University of Arkansas dropping some of their stuff, but maybe able to do it in a different way. I think we're going to have to find ways. The Minority Health Commission can't give minority scholarships. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are happening that I think that they will continue to use a lot of the same things, the bathroom, all those kinds of things, and just continue to creep further and further in, find more creative ways, more horribly creative ways to do those types of things. I also think the shoring up of religious protections is this other same way that they're going to continue to attack rights, and free speech, medical. They're going to continue to creep into our medical rights, and jobs and housing. Dr. Herzig said something about that. And, the thing that I've always known is the LGBTQ community, of course, we have maybe these issues, but the only reason we're having these issues is because they're forcing them into the conversation. We're like everybody else. We want a good job. We want we want to have a safe place to live. We want our kids to get a good education. We want all the same thing. We want good healthcare. We want all the same things that everybody else is. And that's what we should be spending our time making better for everyone, and not trying to spend all this time doing this. I do think that maybe the LEARNS Act is going to, I think, backfire in some ways. And hopefully, I mean, there's still lots of, court cases and a possible ballot initiative and stuff. But I think that with our state money going to private schools, I think there's going to be some ways for us to fight back on some of this, because private schools have been able to discriminate in lots of ways. I mean, I was fired from my job when I got married, from a private school. So I do believe that there's going to be some problems that are going to arise, maybe that will backfire on them. And, one of the things I'm really tired of hearing at the legislature is people coming up to me, we love you, but we've got to do this. We've got to do this. We've got to do this. And I'm tired of those things. And I do think that Arkansans will get pushed too far. I think things are going to get too extreme. And I think that this pendulum will swing back at some point. I just don't want to know what the bottom of that floor is to where, it'll affect people enough that they will swing back. And I agree with what everybody else has said about voting and people getting out and getting involved and voting. I mean, that's the most important thing.
Dr.
Yes.
Cathey, you look like you have
Yes.
something to say.
Vote. The millennials now have the biggest voting block since the baby boomers. So you all can vote. These people who've been up there forever and ever and ever, you all have that power, and they just have to understand that. And not just vote, run. We need people to run. We have so many legislative seats that go totally unopposed. And even if we get people to run, and the Democrats, we may lose and lose and lose, but we get people used to having a two-party vote. So that's important. And also, you vote, you may not run, but donate to people who run. And we know that $10 donations make a difference. So that's the other way you can affect change.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Cathey, and thank you all so much for sharing your perspectives tonight. Just very quickly, we are coming up on the 1 hour mark, so if you all have to go, totally understand, but I just want to get to a few questions from our viewers tonight. EY says, I have noticed that in many areas of Arkansas, gender identity is still rooted in quote unquote male/female expectations set by church. As someone who's lived in Pulaski County wanting to do outreach to an otherwise red state, what successful aspects or approaches have you seen on having others be less hostile toward LGBTQ plus people who naturally challenge those expectations? And no particular order, y'all just jump right in.
I would defer to Dr. Herzig on.
I feel like it's like know your audience. I mean, for instance, like if you have a trans woman or a trans man, I mean, they like those gender roles. They're very affirming. That's what they've been working towards this whole time, to be able to be recognized societally by their gender. And so, but yeah, then it's like you have your non-binary population where it's like, hey, I don't agree with being either, or you have gender fluid where it's like, I feel like one or the other. And so I think it's really just know your audience, know who you're speaking to, and like being able to go out and speak to all the issues and all the groups, and being able to know, like, affirm each group individually. And so, I mean, you obviously can ask about pronouns, like what a person's pronouns are. It got brought up recently. I was just, because I felt like if I was like, hey, what are your preferred pronouns? I read a Facebook post recently from Cash Ashley. And he's like, they're pronouns. They're not my preferred pronouns. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Those are just my pronouns. So that's quick changes, I guess.
And we learn these things,
right?
We're
like I'm
better at it.
And I'm like, oh, I've just been asking. I guess it just rolls off. But
yeah,
yeah. I guess, I mean, really, I don't know. Just know your audience.
All right. And I'm paraphrasing here, but there's a question in the chat about gender affirming care for people who aren't trans, or at least aren't self-identifying as trans. It's my understanding that that's not affected by legislation, but we have a virtual room full of policymakers and healthcare providers. So I just wanted to ask about that.
and ask about.
Basically, I guess it wouldn't, gender affirming care for people who aren't transgender, which I guess I don't know if it would be called gender affirming care in that.
Well, things you have to be careful about is how this legislation spills into things. It's like, oh, you can only do hormone under these guidelines. And it's like, wait a minute. This falls into intersex, or when does hormone management fall into postmenopausal care? How far do we get on this? So again, it gets into, you don't need to legislate medicine. That's for the providers and for science.
What's crazy is I think that it's you see all these low T clinics that are popping up everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so it's like, hey guys, you got low T, it might be natural for your testosterone to be dropping off and becoming, old, but you know what? We can take care of you. We got you testosterone. But only till recently has it really become a little bit more popular for like women are like, I don't want to deal with menopause. I don't want to deal with the effects of not having estrogen. I like my skin. I like my hair. Where it's like women are like, yeah, can I have some estrogen? And it's like, that's becoming like, I don't know. I felt like it was a little misogynistic to be like, oh, there's all these low T clinics, but yeah, it's like, oh, women, you can't have your estrogen. And a lot of that spills over into the trans community too. It's like, what can you have? And so, I don't know. Good thought.
Like you said, on the trans community too, everybody has a different endpoint. Some people want to transition. They don't want hormones. Some people, not everybody, you have this idea that you're trans. Oh, everybody wants to have surgery. No, some people don't, So again, we're dictating, all this legislation creates confusion and chaos. And that's their point.
And I will say, and I'm paraphrasing here, but in the most recent ruling from the federal ruling that struck down the ban on gender affirming care for trans minors in Arkansas, it specifically mentioned this fact that these, like as Dr. Herzig was saying, testosterone can be prescribed to a 60-year-old man, but not to a transgender teen, that was specifically unconstitutional. Representative McCullough, this is also a question of mine, but also coming from the chat from EY. Are there any potential safeguards against politicians who repeatedly lie maliciously?
I mean, it's a serious thing. I feel like for a legislator to get into the well and to, tell a lie. Now, the particular politician that I'm talking about probably would say that she was not lying, that she was believing what was told to her, and that's but it's hearsay. We're not in a court of law, so there's lots of stories that get told around, and but I mean we have ethical things, and we should be able to trust what's said down there. But I mean I just know that this last time, I mean, and I was always hearing that this, the story about a person from California that told all these stories, a person in Texas, a person in Batesville. I mean, we just hear all these hearsay, and they're just, it's like it is in the country now, or in media in general. People can say whatever they want to, and then you can challenge them or not, but the facts are not the facts anymore. And so I think right now I would say that for that particular incident, there's probably no safeguards, because maybe she believed and thought it was the truth, or that it was good information or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think we can go a little bit further, maybe into investigating those things, taking them to leadership and saying, and this is what's going on. And hopefully leadership can talk to those particular people and tell them that this is unacceptable. But, I don't know of any true safeguards. You expect people to get, when they get elected, that they should have some ethical professional behavior. It's just not always the case.
All right, great. Well, one more question if you all have time. This one is specifically for Dr. Cathey, but everyone feel free to jump in. What do you expect the impact of Act 274 or Senate Bill 199? What do you expect the impact of that to be on gender affirming care for minors in Arkansas? And this is a recent state law passed in the most recent legislative session. This is different than the one we were just talking about. This is basically allowing patients to sue their physicians for providing gender affirming care. Yeah, please go ahead.
It creates just a little bit of chaos and confusion in the medical community, and it gives physicians who might otherwise provide trans care a reason not to, and it's going to affect smaller towns and rural areas much more than it will the blue dot that we live in here. But yeah, they win these little piece by piece, taking things away from people.
All right. Well, I think that concludes tonight's program. Thank you all so much for speaking with us today, sharing your perspectives, sharing your stories. I think it was a very important discussion. That concludes our forum tonight. I want to thank all of you all for joining us tonight. I want to thank our participants again for coming out tonight, sharing their ideas. This has been the latest panel in our Issues That Matter series. Please share your comments on this forum and share ideas for any future forums by emailing comments@ualrpublicradio.org. You can also share your thoughts on social media accounts of the Central Arkansas Library System, the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, or KYR FM 89.1. Well, on behalf of CALS, the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, and KYR, I want to thank you all so much for attending. Have a great evening and be safe out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.